is Radio Prague International, coming to you from the Czech capital.
Hello and welcome to Radio Prague International, the external service of Czech Radio, with me, Ruth Vraňková. Coming up in today's program, Czechia mourns Glen Hansard, the Irish musician who had a special bond with the country. Why are Czechs among Europe's least mobile workers? We take a closer look with an expert. And later we visit Jiřina Šiklová's Library, a hidden feminist gem in Prague, preserving the legacy of one of Czechia's leading activists. All that and more is coming up, so stay with us.
News.
The European Commission has approved changes to Czechia's state aid scheme for energy-intensive industries, allowing the government to increase support for companies facing high electricity costs linked to the EU emissions trading system. Under the revised scheme, the maximum share of eligible costs that can be compensated will rise from 75% to 80%. More industrial sectors will also become eligible for the support. According to the Commission, the changes comply with EU state aid rules and are intended to help energy-intensive industries remain competitive while preventing production from moving to countries with less stringent climate regulations. The European Commission has launched a call to build up to 7 large artificial intelligence data centres known as AI gigafactories across Europe. Applications are open until November 12th, with the construction expected to begin next year. Czechia is among the countries bidding to host one of the facilities, with the project backed by the Czech government. The EU had originally planned to build 5 AI gigafactories, but has now increased the number to as many as 7. The Czech Fire Rescue Service is sending a wildfire expert to Brussels to help monitor and coordinate the response to forest fires across Europe and the Mediterranean during the peak fire season. Firefighter Martin Tomášek from the Karlovy Vary Regional Fire Rescue Service will serve as liaison officer at the EU's Emergency Response Coordination Centre. The centre operates around the clock, monitoring emergencies and coordinating assistance under the EU Civil Protection Mechanism. As part of the EU's wildfire support team, Tomášek will monitor and analyse wildfire situations, assess available firefighter resources and help coordinate support for countries affected by major forest fires. The Czech Interior Ministry has closed administrative proceedings against football club Slavia Prague over crowd violence during May's Prague derby against Sparta, concluding that no further sanctions are necessary. The ministry found serious shortcomings in the club's security arrangements, but said measures introduced by Slavia, together with penalties imposed by the League Football Association, were sufficient. Slavia had faced the possibility of playing home matches behind closed doors for up to a year. Following the incidents in which supporters invaded the pitch, attacked Sparta players and threw flares into the away section, Slavia was fined 10 million crowns and ordered to play 4 matches without spectators. The club has since tightened security, including a ban on face coverings and pyrotechnics, and has issued lifetime stadium bans to the fans involved. Prague had around 1.36 million registered motor vehicles last year, nearly 36,000 more than a year earlier, according to the city's newly published 2025 Transport Yearbook. Passenger cars accounted for about 1.1 million of the total. The yearbook points out that many vehicles are registered to companies, meaning the total does not necessarily reflect how many actually operate in Prague. Most vehicles are still powered by combustion engines, while electric cars account for just 1.6% of the fleet. Barrandov Bridge remained Prague's busiest road, carrying an average of 143,000 vehicles on a working day. Public transport accounted for the largest share of journeys in the capital, ahead of walking and car travel. And finally, a quick look at the weather. Friday will be hot and mostly sunny, with temperatures reaching 35 to 39 degrees Celsius. There will be a chance of showers and thunderstorms later in the day, mainly in the northwest. Meteorologists warn that the extreme heat could pose a serious risk, especially for vulnerable people. I'm Ruth Vraňková, and that's the end of the news. The tragic death of the Irish rock musician Glen Hansard on Tuesday made headlines around the world. There has also been an outpouring of grief here in the Czech Republic, where Hansard touched countless lives on many visits over a 30-year period. Ian Willoughby has more.
Byla tu dlouhá cesta, která nás sem přivedla, ale teď jsme tu doma.
It may have been a long journey for Glen Hansard, but it was a regular one. He first performed in Czechia with the Frames in 1996 and subsequently played countless times around the country with the band, solo and as part of the swell season.
So what happens when the heart just stops?
At a gig in Prague some years ago, Hansard told me a bit about his connection to this part of the world.
It's funny, when I came here first, I'd been to New York before I was here, and I could never put my finger on what I loved about New York. And when I came here, I could put my finger on it. What New York is, it's the capital of Europe. And the Eastern European influence in New York was what I liked most about it. And when I came here, I got a purer taste of the same thing. So I can't explain it, I can't put it into words. It's a taste.
The Dubliner also developed strong ties to Czech culture. He loved the work of filmmaker Jan Švankmajer, was close to the late music critic Jiří Černý, and took the name The Swell Season from a novel by Josef Škvorecký. The LP, The Swell Season, was the eponymous debut of his project with singer-songwriter Markéta Irglová, whose family in Moravia Hansard was very close to. It included the song Falling Slowly, which first appeared in the film Beauty and Trouble by Jan Hřebejk. Famously, it was also featured in Once, and carried the Czech-Irish duo, who also starred in the movie, all the way to an Oscar in 2008.
Take this St. Campbell and pour it home.
But as much as anything, Glen Hansard made many, many friends in Prague and around the Czech Republic over the decades. Among them was the young poet Šimon Leitgeb, who spent time with him and his family in Dublin only a couple of weeks ago.
He was really nice to everybody. He was really nice, really kind to me. He was kind to basically everybody who knew him or met him. He was always open. So I think there are two reactions. People are upset because they feel like he could stay here longer and he was at his peak in terms of his career. Right now, people are really sad because he was, as I said, he was a good person.
Leitgeb also shared how he will look back on his friendship with Glen Hansard.
I will remember his smile. That's something which will stay in my memory forever. I hope so, because he had a really charismatic smile, and you know, it was sometimes it was more than words, more than speaking. Also, I will remember his modesty. He was, in this case, he was my idol, my hero. So that's Glen. That's how he was in my eyes.
Czechs are among Europe's least mobile workers. OECD and Eurostat data show they are far less likely than any other Europeans to relocate for work, often preferring to commute instead. Regional geographer and university president Jaroslav Koutsky believes geography, family ties and long-standing habits all help explain why. Vít Pohanka has more.
When Czechia joined the European Union more than 20 years ago, one of the main benefits was supposed to be the freedom to live and work anywhere across the bloc. The idea was simple. Workers could move where jobs were available, while employers could fill labor shortages. As the then European Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights, Nicolas Schmit, told the European Parliament a few years ago, labor mobility remained and still remains one of the foundations of the European Union.
And it is at the heart of a well-functioning single market. Yes, I agree, mobility, the freedom of services is a fundamental freedom of the European Union, but it has to go along with fair working conditions. It has to be fair and it has to be just for everyone.
But when it comes to moving for work, Czechs seem remarkably reluctant to use that freedom. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and Eurostat data show that people in Czechia are among the least geographically mobile in Europe. They are roughly half as likely as neighboring Austrians to move to another region for work and significantly less likely to relocate than, say, Germans or Swedes. Instead, many choose to stay where they are and commute. Why? I put that question to regional geographer and president of the Jan Evangelista Purkyně University in Ústí nad Labem, Jaroslav Koucký.
Maybe we are a small country, everything is reachable, so we don't need to change the place of living. So we are very fixed on families, links and friendship and this kind of ties. So I would say that everything is reachable, so there is no need to move.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about students. When I studied back in the 1980s, and I studied in Olomouc, I would sometimes stay at the student hostel over the weekend. And there were very few of us. Everyone was, going back home to their mom and dad, Is it still the same? I mean, this kind of pattern?
I mean, it's even worse.
Oh, really?
Especially, for example, in Ústí, when commuting among the cities is very, very fast. They just came for a lecture. Mm-hmm. And after the lecture, they leave, they go home and they spend the night there with their parents and with their friends or whatever. So they don't stay at the city and they stay home.
Because that's, again, one of the differences that I find between Czechia and I don't know how it is in all the other countries in Central Europe, but definitely in the US where kids leave for the college somewhere. They stay in the city, or in Britain, where I had the chance to stay, but even in Belgium now, where I had where I spent some time, or France. And I just wonder whether it's a kind of national feature of Czech kids or young college kids, or whether accommodation perhaps is not available or something like that.
Maybe it's once again the same as we discussed before. We want to stay at home. We don't want to move, and so young people prefer stay with their parents and just go to the university for classes. I don't know, but definitely they don't stay there during the weekend as you. I think it's gone, and the success is even if they stay there during the week.
Jaroslav Koucký. Whether that's because housing is expensive, transport has improved, or simply because Czechs value staying close to home, one thing is clear. More than 2 decades after joining the European Union, one of its fundamental freedoms, the freedom to move for work, is one that many Czechs still choose not to use.
Vít Pohanka reporting, and if you want to listen to the whole unabridged interview with Jaroslav Koucký, you will find it in the latest episode of Czechcast, our podcast in English about all things Czech on all major podcast platforms. One of Prague's lesser-known but all the more fascinating libraries is the Jiřina Šiklová Library, hidden in the city centre on the banks of the Vltava. Although it is one of the smaller libraries, it has something to offer even to the most demanding readers and researchers. Romana Grajcarová paid a visit.
Just a few meters from Jurásek Square, almost directly opposite the Manes Gallery, a hidden gem of Prague's literary world occupies the first floor of one of the city's grand riverside buildings overlooking the Vltava. Within rooms where every step across the creaking wooden parquet floors breathes history, more than 9,000 books devoted primarily to feminism and gender studies line the shelves beneath soaring vaulted ceilings. At the heart of this collection, 30 years ago, was the personal library of Czech sociologist, writer and dissident Jiřina Šiklová. Today, the library bearing her name has grown into one of the largest specialized collections editions of its kind in Central and Eastern Europe. According to head librarian Lub Šibil, the library has expanded over the past 3 decades to its current size, largely thanks to donations from Šiklová's friends and from like-minded feminist organizations in Czechia and abroad.
We have professional books, feminist theories, gender studies, etc., as well as fiction, poetry, comic books. I would say the most famous author in general is, for example, Gloria Steinem, but all of us here have our own favorites. For me, it's the comic books, for example, genderqueer, and I'd say there's something for everyone, including children and youth.
Although the library cannot compete in size with the municipal library or the national library, its highly specialized focus means it houses books that cannot be found anywhere else.
We are part of the library network of Interlibrary Loan, and often we have the one book in the whole Czech Republic we can offer to readers, so that's a nice position to have.
In addition to books and journals on feminism, gender and queer studies, the library also houses the archives of Eliška Krásnohorská and the Czech women's movement.
Eliška Krásnohorská was one of the most famous women from the beginnings of the Czech women's movement, and we are lucky to have part of her estate here in the library. The main part of our Eliška Krásnohorská archive, but it's not the only part. We also have estates of many other feminists from the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century. And we also have some documents from Minerva, which was the first high school, let's say, open to women in the Czech lands.
The archive is open to the public and can be accessed without being registered as a library member.
The archive contains personal documents like letters, postcards, personal photos, personal albums, but also official documents, for example, from Minerva and from many other women's organizations. And it's kind of collection of various uses, mostly for researchers. We are still in the state that we have the collection digitized to protect the documents, but people have to come here to access them.
The library is not just a place for books, but also an active cultural center. Although it operates on a limited schedule during the summer, every Wednesday visitors can enjoy a reading room featuring a themed selection of books. Throughout the year, readers can also take part in a variety of community events.
We try to do a couple of community events a year. And for example, we have a traditional event called Tuesdays with the Library, which dates to 2005, I think. And it's a very open format where our guests discuss with a moderator, and it's either about a specific book or a specific feminist topic, and it's open to everyone. And during this summer holidays, we have open reading room. Every Wednesday, you can come and read anything you'd like. You can just sit in a cozy armchair and read for a couple of hours.
In the context of the upcoming Prague Pride, readers at the Jiřina Šiklová Library will, for example, find a selection of queer-themed books waiting for them next Wednesday. Although the library truly has a lot to offer, with a wide range of books not only in Czech and Slovak, but also in English and German, its operation relies largely on the community, volunteers and donations.
Right now we are in dire need of establishing the library more independently because of the project drought and the current socio-political situation that is not very friendly towards gender and feminism. So we would like to stabilize the library, and that's, for example, why we started the crowdfunding campaign.
Says Lou Přibyl, head librarian at the Jiřina Šiklová Library. Readers can find more information on how to support the library as well as its book catalogue on the website of the non-profit organization Gender Studies, which is the organization behind this unique library.
Romana Grajcerová with that report. Just a reminder that you're listening to Radio Prague International, the external service of Czech Radio. Neil Brumell is Professor of Czech Language and Linguistics at the University of Sheffield, where he has been teaching for nearly 3 decades. He was among the scholars who gathered in Prague this week for the 7th World Congress of Bohemian Studies and, during the event, received the Josef Dobrovský Medal for outstanding contributions to Czech studies. I sat down with him to talk about what first drew him to the Czech language, who chooses to study Czech today, and the challenges and opportunities facing the field. First of all, you have spent nearly 3 decades teaching Czech language and linguistics at the University of Sheffield. What first drew you to the Czech language, and why have you decided to devote your career to it?
Well, I was trained actually as a Russianist as an undergraduate and went to postgraduate study really to continue work in Russian and in linguistics, which I found interesting. And in my first year there, I was more or less assigned to study Czech as a second Slavonic language. The Czech teacher at the time there was Hanna Geifmanová, and she was just incredibly inspirational. She really encouraged us to combine that study of Czech language with Czech culture, and she created an entire group of enthusiasts out of us. And so I went away sort of converted. I did continue on and write my PhD on a topic involving Russian linguistics, but it was always a bit of a secret ambition to see whether I could maybe somehow combine that with Czech. And when I finished and a post came up in Czech linguistics at Sheffield, I thought, well, I've got to try this, try it out. To my great surprise, I was offered the job, and I decided, okay, so let's give this a try. But I think what drew me to Czech was not only kind of feeling more comfortable in the culture and more comfortable in the place, but also the sense that, at least in the West, the study of these smaller Slavonic languages was more of an open field. It felt to me like there was so much to do and so much of interest, and there was a very rich vein of material to mine. Russian was already well done. And I really felt when I did things Czech like I was making more of a contribution.
Who chooses to study Czech today? Has the profile of students changed? What draws them to the field?
We do have the occasional heritage student. With Czech, I think that's always been a real minority. Many more of those heritage speakers go to study Russian or Polish. But with Czech, it tends to be some interest having taken a trip here as a teenager or earlier. Sometimes it's just a desire to try something a little bit different. I think most students at 18 come to university and they don't know Czech authors and they don't know a lot about Czech history. Something draws them to it, and then it's our job as the teaching staff to kind of deepen that interest and show them what else there is to stay interested in Czech. And that's what we try to do over the course of the degree.
So to convert them as you had been converted 30 or more than 30 years ago?
Fundamentally, yes, just following in my teacher's footsteps, I guess.
Much of your research has focused on how the Czech language is used and how it changes. What do you find most fascinating about Czech?
I think when you approach a language like Czech as a non-native speaker, I think especially a speaker of a language like English, that can be quite analytic and isolating. Our words don't have a lot of different forms to them. There's just a couple in each case. And you encounter a language like Czech that has, 10, 12, 14, 20 different forms for every word. At first it feels a bit overwhelming. And if you are the sort of slightly nerdy person who can get interested in that sort of thing, and I guess I am, you do start to ask yourself why and how does it work and why does it work and what extra do the Czechs get from having all of that, abundant material to work with. And I think that was the first impulse that drew me into the study of morphological variation, because it's something we don't have a huge amount of in English, and I wanted to understand why.
You have also translated several books into English. What were the biggest challenges in translating those texts?
I think every book that I did was very different. I've translated novelists like Pavel Kohut, whose style is quite complex, and translating those quite long, complicated, playful sentences into English and still having it come out reading like an English text was the biggest challenge for me there. With an author like Daniela Fischerova, I think there it was, in a way, the simplicity of the text and the fact of how stripped back it was in many ways that, again, poses you certain challenges as a translator. You have to recreate that in some ways for the reader. And doing a historical memoir like I did with Helga Weissova, that again presents the challenges of making sure that an English reader who doesn't have any of that cultural background can still understand it and approach it and have the same immediacy for it that it has for the reader in the Czech Republic.
At a time when the humanities face increasing pressure in many countries, what do you see as the biggest challenges or perhaps opportunities for Czech studies?
Well, I think in general you're absolutely right that especially the study of languages is coming under a lot of pressure, and especially with the advent of AI, there is a feeling, I think, in the public and among students that maybe it isn't actually worth learning these things that we used to sell as kind of a usable skill, like translating and interpreting. Now there is the possibility of having them done at least partially well or adequately by machine translation. And we need a new way of thinking about how to work with AI to make the study of languages seem meaningful again. I think Czech has some of the best resources for the study of language that are available really across any language. And I'm thinking here of many of the tools that are available through the Czech Language Institute and the Czech National Corpus. And there's also a lot of expertise in the field, just really absolutely world-class people working in it. So for us, I think there's a real opportunity there to do work on Czech that is meaningful in a world context.
And that interview with Neil Bemel, which was first broadcast earlier this month, brings us to the end of our program here on Radio Prague International. If you have any comments about the program, then please send them to us. You can contact us by email at english@radio.cz or on Facebook and Twitter. We'll be glad to hear from you. But that's all for now from me, Ruth Fraňková. Thank you very much for joining us, and goodbye.